Hey everybody, today I'm talking about my top 10 board games that I want to play but not necessarily own. And that could be for a number of reasons. Perhaps there's something in the rules or mechanically that raises concern for me because maybe through previous experience it hasn't gone down too well. And additionally, maybe I just know these games aren't going to be right for my collection because I'm never going to have the right opportunity or game group to get these ones off the shelf and get them played. But despite those issues, there's still something here that intrigues me and makes me want to try them out. So let's get started with the list. Now, of course, I've never played any of these games, so my knowledge of these games is going to be a lot less than it normally would. But regardless of that, let's get started at number 10. At number 10, I have Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. So the main reason I want to play this one is because of the intellectual property itself. I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan, and something I really want to get into the mindset of is try to divert so much about thinking about the mechanical side of games. I find it very hard to enjoy games that are purely story-driven and focus more on the immersion and theme of a game more than the actual mathematical part of a game. And I think maybe Journeys in Middle-earth could be the game to sway me more from that mechanical side of things to that story side of things because I am so invested in the theme itself. And I also quite like the idea that this game isn't kind of dice driven in terms of its combat. You are flipping cards over to resolve combat and trying to match symbols and things. And that sounds interesting to me. And one of the other kind of big red flags for me is that this is so app driven. I know this is a big portion of the game is going to be the digital side of things rather than the actual physical cardboard pieces, and that for me is also raising some concern, but I think maybe I could overlook that and could enjoy a few sessions of this one. And additionally, I do tend to play most kind of one and done style games, and I don't tend to play a lot of campaigns or legacy style games, but I think this one could have enough to hook me again because of that IP. So I know this has a lot of praise. There's a lot of things you could do with the app here because you can constantly add new content, new stories, new characters. And this one could be the game, if I had the time to invest in, that could really help me get me immersed in the actual story and in the theme, which normally would be something I wouldn't do. So that is Journeys in Middle-earth at number 10. At number 9, I have Merchants and Marauders. So this one, I just love the idea and concept of this being almost like a sandbox-style pirate-themed game, as you can sail around, fight pirates, you can do trading, you can pretty much do anything you want in this game, and you're not given a direct path, you're not led down a certain track. And I like that idea, and I must say I've not really played a sandboxy style game before, and I'm interested to see how I would kind of respond and react to it. So yeah, that for me it sounds interesting, and I like pirate games in general. I like the way this game looks. I have again heard some concerns about some of the mechanical standpoints of the game and it taking too long. Some big elements of downtime in this game, again, which normally is again another red flag for me. But I would like to just take an afternoon and just enjoy or explore what this game has to offer, see how I'll react to a sandbox style game. And because this one is the pirate theme, it could be the right game for me. So that is Merchants and Marauders at number 9. At number 8, I have Diplomacy. So Diplomacy is kind of like an iconic area majority negotiation style game. I tend to like those things, but the big red flag for me in this one is how long it takes. This one is going to take 4, 5, 6 hours to play. I just haven't got the gaming group to invest that amount of time into playing a game, particularly when it's going to be as dry as this. But for me, this one really is on that bucket list style of game for me. I want to play this at least once in my life and just again put that evening or afternoon aside just to fully get immersed and get my head in the game. I understand this is completely cutthroat and people can get eliminated and things, but I think if everybody gets into the right mindset and everyone's prepared for that going into the game, then this could be something I really embrace and get into. So we're really intrigued by this game. I want to try it, but I really don't see that happening anytime soon at least. That is Diplomacy at number 8. At number 7, I have This War of Mine. This is another game that's really hooked me because of the story-driven style of things. This is all about the doom and gloom and fallout of people on the kind of ground level of an ongoing war. So I like that gritty nature of the game. I tend to like dark stories. I like depressing stories, believe it or not. But I'm interested to see how well the writing is implemented in this game. I do read a lot, and I've heard this game is really well written and quite poignant, I suppose, in its approach. I've got some concerns about the actual gameplay itself. Is it purely based on that story side of things, or is the gameplay strong, or is it simply just kind of going through the motions and seeing how the story develops? I'll be interested to find that one out. This almost kind of rings bells of a game like Dead of Winter, a game that I thought mechanically was very weak, but I did like the way that the stories developed and the kind of lasting memories you took from the game. And I think maybe this War of Mine could fall into that category. Something I definitely want to try, but I really don't see it being right for my collection. So that's why this War of Mine is at number 7. At number 6, I have Western Legends. Now, the reason for this one being on the list is almost identical to Merchants and Marauders being on the list. However, I think this one looks a little bit more polished than Merchants and Marauders in terms of the gameplay itself. So this one is another sandbox style game, but set in the kind of Wild West. As you can go around, you can gamble, with these poker cards, you can herd cattle, you can go and hunt down bandits and things, you can be an outlaw yourself, so lots of things you can do here, and you're pretty much given free reign to do what you want. And I've heard that even a lot of kind of more mechanical minded gamers enjoy this game, which actually does intrigue me a bit more. So again, it looks really good on the table, the presentation and the production is fantastic, and I'm quite interested about how this one plays out. I think this one could be one of the ones in terms of the gameplay that I would enjoy the most on this list. That is Western Legends. Definitely would be willing to set aside a few hours and give that one a play. At number 5, I have Cedarial Confluence. So this one is a pretty involved Euro negotiation style game, which you might think, if you've watched my content regularly, might tick a lot of boxes for me. And yes, that is the case. On paper, this is everything I'd like, but I just know that I haven't got the game group to enjoy this one. So not only because I know this game goes on for hours and hours and hours, but also it's quite involved and quite complex. Whereas the negotiation games I tend to enjoy, I play with more casual gamer friends, and they like that kind of low barrier to entry. And this one is going to really require a lot more of that initial rules intake and a lot more rules overhead in order to get the game playing in the first place. But with the right group, I could really see this game shining for me, as you really are kind of converting resources into other resources, trying to get as many points as you can, and strike up those great deals that benefit you more than other people. Out of all these games, this is probably the game I would probably take a chance on actually purchasing for myself, but I just know I have that kind of knowledge in the back of my head that this isn't going to go down well with my gaming group. It's going to be too much, and it's just not going to strike that right balance of the negotiation and just the rules overhead. So unfortunately, I don't see this one being right for my collection, but I would certainly be very excited to try somebody else and be taught this game and to get it played. So that is Cedarial Confluence at number 5. At number 4, I have a bit of a silly one with Fireball Island. So this one is a very simple, I think it's a set collection style game. You're moving a little kind of tourist around this big island, but this island is this big plastic, almost like injection molded plastic structure. And every now and then these marbles roll down these different chutes and can potentially knock your player piece over, basically, and set you back a bit. I just think this game would go down really well, but I think my concern is that it would go down really well once, and then it'll get very tiring and very boring very quickly. So for that reason, I'm not going to invest in the high price tag to get this onto my shelf, just to get it played once or twice. And take up a hell of a lot of space, but something I'd really like to experience. I think it looks like a lot of fun, and for a light game, it's got that novelty factor and that fun factor that again tends to go down well, but for very limited times. So for that reason, I'd like to play Fireball Island, but I certainly don't think it's going to be right for my collection. At number 3, I have Blood on the Clock Tower. So this is a really involved social deduction style game with a lot going on. Tons of different roles where you're trying to, as the bad guy, basically trying to win the game through nefarious means, and the good guys are trying to wean out those bad guys and to find out who they are and expose them. I tend to enjoy social deduction games if they're well executed. Maybe for years past I did enjoy them more than I do now, but I still think the good ones do stand up well, and I do like to play them periodically. This one, it looks like more involved than any other social deduction game that I've played before, for better or for worse, and I think it would be a really solid game, but I think there's too many moving parts here, and it requires too high of a player count to get the most from this game. So first of all, I'm pretty sure this game requires a moderator to actually, make sure the game runs smoothly, which is automatically going to take my player count down by 1. Generally, my maximum player count is going to be 6 players. I think this one shines starting at about 8 players, which is never ever happens for me. So for those reasons alone, I'm just never going to get this one played if I did end up purchasing it. And I just know it's going to be played so few and far in between that that it's just not going to warrant a purchase. But I'd love to be taught this one in the right experience with a big player count where everyone's invested and wants to get the most out of it. I think it would go down a treat, but that's just not going to happen very regularly at all. I'm talking years apart. So therefore, I'm not going to buy Blood on the Clock Tower, but would love to try it. At number 2, I have The King's Dilemma. So I think I mentioned at the beginning of the video that campaign games and legacy style games generally don't fit my style of play because I play so many different things. I don't have the time or the really inclination to play the game again and again and again to make sure I have that thread of story remaining fresh in a player's mind. Or all the players' minds. The King's Dilemma is very story driven as you are basically you take up, I suppose, the position of all these royal figures, or basically the King's Council, I suppose, and you're trying to advise them on all these different, almost like political events, basically, and they can be quite controversial things, and you're trying to sway the king or try to influence that decisions to your needs and your basically your house's needs and desires. And I love that idea, this kind of historical drama, basically, where you're trying to steer things in your direction and to argue your case as to why that one is. Now, I love that idea in a thematic sense and in an immersive sense. But I do have massive concerns about how strong the gameplay in this game actually is. How much of it is player driven in terms of creating that story and immersion yourself, and how does that link and hook with the actual mechanisms of the game and the decision space in the game. So I'd be interested to see or hear your opinions if you played the King's Dilemma and how those two things are balanced. How well of a design is it in terms of the gameplay, and how well of it is dependent on the players creating the story and immersion themselves. But I'll be really interested in trying this one with the same group again and again and again, really getting invested in the story and seeing where it goes, and basically fighting your corners and creating these compelling arguments as to why you should do certain things. I'm really intrigued by the setting of this one, but again, those red flags for me about how strong is the gameplay itself is something that I can't quite get over, but would love to try it to see if that is the case or not. That is The King's Dilemma at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Root. So Root is more of a war-style, Euro-style game, and I'm pretty confident I would enjoy this game. This is an ultra asymmetrical game where each player takes a different faction and they all win and interact in completely different ways. And for me, that is the big appeal to this game, but it's also probably the biggest area for concern, because I just have a massive idea in my head that if I did purchase this game or teach it to other players, then that initial teach is going to be too much, and just to break it down and just explain a different game to each player is just going to be too much of an initial rules overhead, and it's going to completely basically alienate people before the game even gets started. So I don't think the people who I play this with would have enough investment or desire to learn the game and would be interested enough to play the game again and again to get the most out of it. So for that reason, I just know it's not going to be right for me. If I'm thinking logically, that is the case. But again, if somebody was very knowledgeable about the game and could teach the game to me and would have other people who are wanting to play the game and to experience the game to the fullest, then I just know this game would be a hit for me. So sadly, it's not right for my collection, but I'm pretty sure that I would love it. So that is Root at number 1. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do have any knowledge about these games and maybe have some knowledge about the games I tend to enjoy, then I'd like to hear your feedback on these. Do you think I would enjoy them or not? For everyone else, I really appreciate you checking out this video. If you have enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. Additionally, if you want to go the extra step and support me on Patreon, then I'll leave the link below for that one. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye now.